I was demoted after requesting a salary increase. My system was handed to a guy who once deleted an entire database. I said nothing, just kept working. Who is she and why is she not in the office? I-29F. Never thought asking for a raise would destroy my career, but here we are. 3 months ago, I walked into my manager's office with a folder full of documentation. Performance reviews, project completions, client testimonials, everything that proved I deserved the 15% salary increase I was requesting. I've been running the company's entire customer management system for 2 years, working nights and weekends to keep it running smoothly. The system handled over 50,000 client records and generated reports that the entire sales team relied on daily. My manager listened politely, nodded at all the right moments, and told me he'd get back to me within the week. That was the last normal conversation we had. 2 weeks later, I was called into HR. They explained that due to restructuring, my role was being adjusted. I was being moved from senior systems analyst to junior data entry specialist. My salary would remain the same, they assured me, as if that made the humiliation any less bitter. The real punch came when they told me who would be taking over my system. Derek from IT support. The same Derek who, 6 months earlier, had accidentally deleted our entire client database during what he called routine maintenance. It took me 3 days of working around the clock to restore everything from backups. The same Derek who once asked me how to restart a computer. I sat in that sterile HR office, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt something cold settle in my chest. They expected me to train him. They expected me to hand over 2 years of my work to someone who couldn't tell the difference between a hard drive and a USB port. But I smiled. I nodded. I said I understood completely. The next morning, I began Derek's training. I showed him the basic functions, the daily reports, the client interface. I was thorough, professional, and helpful. I documented everything in neat little instruction manuals. I answered his questions with patience that surprised even me. What I didn't show him was the real system. The one I'd built from scratch using advanced SQL queries and custom scripts. The automated processes that ran in the background. The fail-safes and backup protocols. The intricate web of dependencies that kept everything functioning seamlessly. Derek saw the pretty interface I'd created, the buttons and drop-down menus that made complex operations look simple. He had no idea that behind every click was hundreds of lines of code I'd written during those late nights when the office was empty except for the security guard and the hum of servers. I moved to my new desk in the corner, next to the supply closet. From there, I had a perfect view of Derek's workstation. I watched him fumble through the daily reports, taking twice as long as necessary. I watched him panic when clients called with questions about data discrepancies. I watched him stay late every night, trying to figure out why certain reports weren't generating correctly. He never asked me for help. Pride, probably. Or maybe management had told him not to rely on the former systems person. 3 weeks into Derek's tenure, the first major issue hit. The monthly client retention report, the one the CEO presented to the board, came out completely wrong. Numbers that should have shown a 12% increase instead showed a 3% decrease. Derek spent an entire weekend trying to fix it, but he was looking in all the wrong places. I could have helped him in 5 minutes. Instead, I worked on my data entry tasks and said nothing. The CEO was furious. The board meeting was postponed. Derek got a formal warning. A month later, the system started running slower. Response times that used to be instant now took several seconds. Derek ran virus scans, defragmented hard drives, and even had the IT department upgrade the server hardware. Nothing helped. I knew exactly what was wrong. The database needed optimization, a routine maintenance task I performed monthly. But Derek didn't know about it because it wasn't in any of his training materials. Why would it be? It was advanced database administration, not basic system operation. Clients started complaining. The sales team couldn't access records quickly enough during calls. Productivity dropped. Derek was called into meetings almost daily. Still, I said nothing. By month 3, things were falling apart spectacularly. The automated backup system I designed had a built-in expiration date, a security feature I'd implemented to prevent unauthorized access to old data. Derek didn't know about it because he'd never bothered to learn the underlying architecture. When the backup stopped working, Derek didn't notice for 2 weeks. By then, they were operating without any safety net. One small mistake could wipe out everything. That mistake came on a Tuesday morning. Derek was trying to run a simple query to find clients who hadn't made purchases in 6 months. Somehow, he managed to execute a delete command instead of a select command. In 30 seconds, he erased 15,000 client records. The panic was immediate and absolute. Derek's face went white as he stared at his screen. He tried to restore from backup, but of course, the backups weren't working. He called the IT department, but they couldn't help with database recovery. He even called the software vendor, but they explained that data recovery wasn't part of their support package. I watched all of this from my corner desk, entering data with steady keystrokes, my face a mask of professional indifference. The CEO called an emergency meeting. The entire management team was there, along with Derek, the IT director, and surprisingly me. They wanted to know if there was any way to recover the lost data. Derek looked at me with desperate eyes. He finally asked if I knew anything about database recovery. I told him honestly that I might be able to help, but I'd need full administrative access to the system, access that had been revoked when I was demoted. The room went quiet. My manager shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The CEO asked why I didn't have access anymore, and my manager explained about the restructuring and how Derek was now the primary systems administrator. The CEO's expression was unreadable as he asked me directly, "Could I fix this?" I paused, as if considering the technical challenges. Then I explained that yes, I probably could recover most of the data, but it would require working with some advanced recovery tools and custom scripts I developed. It might take several days of intensive work. The CEO approved overtime immediately. He also temporarily restored my full system access. I spent the next 3 days in the office, working around the clock. But I wasn't just recovering data. I was implementing something much more comprehensive. You see, during those months of watching Derek struggle, I'd been busy. In my spare time, I'd been developing a completely new system architecture. More efficient, more secure, more robust than anything we'd had before. I'd also been documenting every single failure, every client complaint, every productivity loss that had occurred under Derek's management. When I recovered the data, I also migrated everything to my new system. I created detailed reports showing the performance improvements, the enhanced security features, the streamlined processes. I documented the cost savings from improved efficiency and the risk mitigation from better backup protocols. Most importantly, I prepared a comprehensive analysis of what had gone wrong over the past 3 months. Not pointing fingers, just presenting facts. Response time increases, client satisfaction drops, productivity losses, and finally, the catastrophic data loss that could have destroyed the company. On Friday morning, I presented everything to the CEO. The recovered data, the new system, and the performance analysis. I explained that while I'd been able to fix the immediate crisis, the underlying problems would persist unless we addressed the root causes. The CEO studied my reports for a long time. Then he asked me a simple question: what would I need to prevent this from happening again? I told him I'd need to return to my original role, with appropriate compensation for the additional responsibilities I'd taken on. I also suggested that Derek might be better suited to a different position, perhaps one that didn't involve critical system administration. The following Monday, I was back at my old desk with a new title: Senior Systems Administrator. My salary increase was approved, not the 15% I'd originally requested, but 25%. Derek was transferred to general IT support, where his skills were better matched to the role. But the real satisfaction came from something else entirely. During those 3 months of watching Derek struggle, I've been keeping detailed logs of every system access, every failed attempt, every workaround he'd tried. I'd also been monitoring the network traffic and database queries. All perfectly legal. I still had read access to the system logs as part of my data entry role. What I discovered was fascinating. Derek hadn't just been incompetent, he'd been actively trying to reverse engineer my work. He'd spent hours trying to crack the custom scripts I'd written, attempting to figure out how the automated processes worked. He'd even tried to access restricted areas of the database that weren't part of his assigned duties. More interesting was what I found in his email logs. Messages to external recruiters, describing himself as the architect of our customer management system. Job applications where he claimed credit for developing innovative database solutions and streamlining complex business processes. Derek had been planning to steal my work and use it to get a better job elsewhere. I compiled all of this evidence into a neat report and submitted it to HR as part of a routine security audit I'd been asked to perform in my new role. The report showed not just Derek's technical incompetence, but also his attempts at intellectual property theft and resume fraud. Derek was terminated the following week. But I wasn't done yet. You see, during my research into Derek's activities, I discovered something else. My original demotion hadn't been about restructuring at all. It had been about cost-cutting. My manager had been under pressure to reduce departmental expenses, and my salary was one of the larger line items. Derek, being junior level, cost half as much as I did. The plan had been to demote me, hoping I'd quit, then replace me with someone cheaper. They'd assumed that running the system was simple enough that anyone could do it. They'd never understood the complexity of what I'd built. My manager had gambled with the company's most critical system to save money on his budget. And he'd lost spectacularly. I documented all of this as well. The budget pressures, the cost-cutting measures, the decision to prioritize short-term savings over system stability. I presented it as a case study in risk management, showing how penny-wise, pound-foolish decisions could threaten entire business operations. The CEO was not pleased to learn that his customer management system, the backbone of the company's operations, had been treated as a disposable commodity. My manager was restructured out of his position within a month. 6 months later, I was promoted to IT director. Now, when people ask me about that period, those 3 months when I was demoted and Derek was running my system, I tell them it was a valuable learning experience. I learned about patience, about documentation, about the importance of understanding complex systems before making changes. What I don't tell them is how satisfying it was to watch everything fall apart exactly as I knew it would. How I'd planned every step, anticipated every failure, prepared for every crisis. They wanted to replace me with someone cheaper and less experienced. They wanted to treat my expertise as if it were disposable. They learned, in the most expensive way possible, that some things can't be replaced. The best part? I never had to say a word against Derek or my former manager. I never had to complain or point fingers or make accusations. I just did my job, documented everything, and let their own incompetence speak for itself. Sometimes the best revenge is simply giving people exactly what they asked for. Update 1. 3 months into my new role as IT director, something interesting happened. Derek applied for a position at one of our competitor companies. As part of their background check, they called our HR department for a reference. I wasn't involved in the reference call, but I did review Derek's application when the competitor's IT director reached out to me directly. They'd heard about our recent system improvements and wanted to know if Derek had been involved in developing them. I was completely honest. I explained that Derek had been responsible for system administration during a period when we experienced significant performance issues and data loss. I mentioned that he'd been transferred to a different role after these incidents. I didn't need to embellish or exaggerate. The facts spoke for themselves. Derek didn't get the job. Update 2. A year later, I discovered that Derek had been spreading rumors about me in industry circles. He was telling people that I'd sabotaged his work, that I'd deliberately withheld information during his training, that I'd set him up to fail. Interestingly, these rumors actually helped my reputation. Other IT professionals who knew my work found Derek's claims laughable. The idea that someone could sabotage a system by not revealing undocumented features and custom code was absurd to anyone who understood software development. More importantly, Derek's accusations raised questions about his own competence. If he'd been unable to manage a system without constant hand-holding from his predecessor, what did that say about his technical skills? The rumors backfired spectacularly. Instead of damaging my reputation, they highlighted Derek's inability to take responsibility for his failures. Update 3. 2 years after the original incident, our company was acquired by a larger corporation. During the due diligence process, our customer management system was identified as a key asset. The acquiring company's technical team was impressed by its efficiency, security features, and scalability. The system I'd built, the one Derek had nearly destroyed, was valued at over $2 million in the acquisition. My role was considered essential to the transition, and I received a significant retention bonus to stay on with the new company. Derek, meanwhile, was working at a small startup, doing basic technical support for $15,000 less than what he'd made at our company. Sometimes patience really is a virtue. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being excellent at what you do, while letting others demonstrate their own limitations. The corporate world can be brutal, but it's also surprisingly fair in the long run. Competence rises, incompetence falls, and eventually, everyone ends up exactly where they belong. I never did have to say who Derek was or why he wasn't in the office anymore. His work, or lack thereof, said everything that needed to be said.